special programme on Thredbo. Tonight, what really caused the landslide that killed 18 people. Our investigation uncovers new evidence that this was no act of God. Plus, our exclusive interview with sole survivor, Stuart Diver.
Rescue on bunk. Can anyone hear me?
For 65 hours, Stuart Diver lay trapped in his tiny concrete tomb.
It was hell. I'm scared of the dark and I'm claustrophobic.
Lying next to him was the body of his young wife, Sally.
And what was your worst moment down there?
The moment Sally died. Yeah.
Now, for the first time, Stuart Diver tells of his terrifying ordeal and his incredible rescue.
Can you hear me?
It was an unbelievable feeling to feel a human hand and know, feel the warmth of that hand and know that, or from that moment on, I knew that it was going to be okay, they were going to get me out.
But Stuart Diver is the lucky one. 18 others died at Thredbo in a disaster that experts say should never have been allowed to happen.
It has been said by some that this was merely an act of God.
Well, God's not that stupid. She doesn't make elementary errors of common sense.
As a special witness investigation will show, fatal mistakes were made.
But there are no outlet holes here.
In this case, there are no outlet holes.
And disturbing evidence that the Thredbo disaster could happen again.
There are other areas on that slope which are unstable.
Stuart Diver is claustrophobic and scared of the dark. Yet for 65 unbearable hours, he was trapped in his frozen concrete tomb, calling out to rescuers above him. They were unable to hear him. What this young ski instructor went through almost defies the imagination. For what must have seemed like an eternity, he lay beneath the rubble in a tiny space that was barely bigger than he was. Repeatedly, he was threatened with death by drowning as the water swirled around his head. All he had was an air pocket inches deep. And all the while, he was lying next to the body of his dead wife, Sally. Stuart had no way of knowing that 17 other people had died in the landslide, and that is something he still has to come to terms with. As he himself admits, the wounds from frostbite are healing fast, but the emotional scars will take far longer. This is Stuart Diver's own story, told exclusively to witness, and as you'll see, it is a remarkable one.
What is your assessment of the chances of finding anyone alive?
Infinitesimally small.
They call him the miracle of Thredbo. The man who emerged from hell with hardly a scratch. But for Stuart Diver, it's still like a dream.
Still seems very unreal. Like I still don't feel like this Stuart Diver that everyone talks about. You know, this, whatever, the headline's been miracle man who's, you know, saved, you know, managed to survive for 65 hours. It doesn't feel like me.
Before he became a celebrity, Stuart Diver was a ski instructor at Thredbo. His wife, Sally, worked in the resort hotel. At 11:30 on the night of 30th of July, they were asleep in their ground floor flat of Bimberdine Lodge. Then there was a rumble and a roar, and all hell broke loose.
Massive explosion, like a bomb going off. Within 5 seconds, everything had collapsed down in on us. Looked at the window's all imploding in. I was thinking, you know, machine gun fire or something. This can't be Thredbo, you know, what's happening? Yeah, because you're just in a daze, get up. And then I thought, Jesus, the building's collapsing. So I've gone back down, and that's what probably saved my life.
The initial landslide swept through the Carinya Lodge, but the wave of earth, rocks and trees did not stop there. It went over a road...
Stuart was too shocked to guess what had happened. But the landslide had swept the Carinya Lodge down the hill onto Bimberdine, burying 19 people. Stuart and Sally were entombed several metres below the surface, between two slabs of concrete, in a tiny pocket, barely bigger than he was.
It was hell. I'm scared of the dark, and I'm claustrophobic. And I was in an area where I had about 3 inches of space above my head, and then it slowly tapered down to my feet.
You know, this is the first half hour of daylight, They haven't been able to do anything in the darkness because of the instability of the place.
The first rescuers to the scene found devastation and frustration. For rescuers on the mountain, it was bitterly cold, especially at night when temperatures fell well below freezing. But they at least could work to keep warm. Underground, where the sun didn't shine, Stuart was wearing only his boxer shorts and was unable to move. And a chill wind and icy water threatened to do what the landslip had not.
Cold like I've never ever experienced before. And that was what I thought was going to kill me for sure. I didn't think it was possible to survive. And, yeah, the water was, at times, it flowed over my whole body. So the only way I could survive was I pushed myself up against the roof and just had a little pocket of air right up against the roof like that. I'd just breathe on the roof and the water would be flying around like this. And I'd say to myself, either go 2 inches higher so that we can end it, or drop off. And just as, you know, it'd flow for 10 minutes, and just as it was, just as I'm thinking, this is it, I'm going to just have to let my body go down into the water, it would go, or down further, totally into the water would stop.
It was only mid-morning, 10 hours later, that the real search for unlikely survivors could begin.
At this stage, we really don't know. I mean, it's a horrible mess there.
The searchers would take more than 2 days even to realise that Stuart was there. But underneath the debris, he could hear virtually their every move.
I could hear them from the very first instant that they came onto the site. And that was one of the hardest things, because I couldn't believe that they couldn't hear me. And I was thinking, I mean, how hard can it be? Just come and dig me out. I mean, it's not that hard. It's a bit of mud and concrete.
Underneath these huge slabs of concrete, 2 bodies have already been found, and it's here that the rest of their friends are expected to be dug out.
And what was your worst moment down there?
The moment Sally died, and I could hear the water rushing. It was the worst moment.
For almost all of his 65 hours underground, Stuart lay next to the body of his wife. Sally Diver was lying in bed next to him when the landslide struck, and she died within seconds of the collapse.
The roof, as it came down, we had a metal bed head, got the metal bed head on the way, and that pinned Sally to the bed along with other beams and stuff like that. So she was right next to me in the double bed just here. That pinned her to the bed. She was screaming, I was screaming, just total, absolute mayhem. Sal was yelling out for me to help her, so I looked down, felt around for 2 seconds, pitch black, choking in dust and stuff like that. Tried to free Sal, just slid in, because you think we're in this space now, slid in beside her, could feel her face, felt down, realised bed head trapped on her body, tried to lift it, no way I could lift it. She was screaming, and then I heard the water coming. 25 seconds in, water came. Within 5 seconds, she was drowned. That was it.
Jesus.
So the screaming stopped.
Sally's mother, Margie, had naturally feared the worst. But ever since her brother had phoned her on the morning that news of the disaster broke, she had hoped against hope that both Stuart and Sally had survived.
Hello, Margaret speaking. I just hoped and prayed that they were okay, because I knew where they lived was at the bottom of the lodge, and I knew that if anybody was going to survive, and if the slabs had fallen and it looked like there was a cavity, that if they were tucked in there, that they would be okay. And I also knew that if Sally was alive, that Stuart would have done his darndest to keep her going. But, that wasn't to be.
Almost from the beginning, heavy lifting gear was on standby at the site. But fears that further slips would threaten more lives made rescue attempts frustratingly slow.
We've got to be very careful as to how we go about lifting slabs, lifting concrete, disturbing any of it, because it may cause a slip again.
Meanwhile, in real pain, Stuart Diver fought despair and refused to give up.
There was probably two main things that kept me going, and that was Sally was right next to me. My love for her and her love for me. I was thinking, you bastards have killed my wife. You know, that was sort of the attitude when I was down there. I was thinking, you know, you've killed my wife, the most precious thing to me in the world, so you're not going to get me. And then the other thing that once I'd, you know, sort of used up all that aggression and anger was the love of the people outside, because they'd already lost, you know, for Margie, she'd lost her daughter, and I'd lost my wife, and I was thinking, you know, if they lose me as well, then, you know, that'll kill them.
While the heavy equipment stayed on the sidelines, it was safe to drill into the rubble and use a probe camera to look for survivors.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yet neither a camera nor powerful listening equipment could find him.
It was used, but it may have been used at a time where Stuart was unconscious or asleep and wasn't making any noise whatsoever.
What do you know about the rescue attempts?
Stuart, however, is quite sure he was shouting a lot of the time.
I yelled, screamed my head off to try and get them to hear me. And I couldn't believe that they couldn't hear me.
As the hours dragged by and his frustration mounted, Stuart became angrier, but more determined.
If you're just going to let yourself sink into the water, then you're just a weak bastard. So that's what I swore at everyone, swore at myself. You know, come on, you can't be weak like this. You don't be so lazy and just let yourself go like that. Let's keep going. And I think that's when I got the determination to start doing things.
Stuart remembered he had a warm, fleecy jacket close to his bed, which he freed from the mud and rock after a 2-hour struggle.
And I pulled it out, and it was covered in mud and urine and everything else that I'd been doing down there. And at first I didn't want to put it on because I thought, this is just disgusting. It killed me, but it got me warm, and it probably was one of the things that saved me.
Above his head, Stuart realised there was a shiny whiteboard. He put that into service too.
It just happened to be about the length of my torso, and I slipped that underneath my body, and that lifted me off the mud. So in the mud, there'd been all these really sharp rocks and stuff, driving, just grinding into my back for hours and hours on end, and just causing me intense pain, which was probably good because it kept me awake, because I couldn't go to sleep with that sort of pain. But then I put this whiteboard there and it lifted me out of the water.
Unaware of the extraordinary struggle going on below them, by Friday, the rescuers had begun to despair.
What are the chances of these victims being alive?
I think at this stage, those chances are quite remote.
With hope fading fast, rescuers began to take greater risks, tunnelling into the wreckage to search for spaces where survivors might lie. Stuart's body, by this time, had succumbed to the cold. His mind, meanwhile, was somewhere else.
I had the most fantastic dreams I've ever had down there, just travelling all over the world and just doing amazing things. It was unbelievable.
But even when you're having those dreams,
Yeah.
you then come down again and you feel again, shit, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
I don't want to die.
Yeah, it was the anger kept on taking over. It was always at the end of the dream, I'd come out and it ended the same way. I was stuck in a little box, a shoebox in China, okay, and it was on a movie set. And I'd keep on yelling to the guys who were making the set. I'd keep on yelling. I'd say, why don't you change the set? Like, what are you doing to me? You've got to just change the set. It's all too easy, guys. I'm sick of this set. You know, we've done the entrapment scene in this movie. Let's get out of it. And every single time, it wouldn't change. I'd be the same. I'd be trapped. And a lot of the time, I'd have dreams about going off to lunch with businessmen in London or whatever. So I kept on buying new suits and all that sort of stuff. And so every time I'd wake up, I'd have undone my fleece and I'd have my boxer shorts as far as I could pull them down around my knees because I was getting ready to get into this new suit. And I'd wake up and I'd think, Jesus Christ, what are you doing, Stu? Let's do the jacket back up and pull it back on again type thing. It was just amazing.
As Stuart drifted in and out of hallucinations, the world had just about given up on finding anyone alive. But as Saturday's papers hit the streets, something remarkable had already proved them wrong.
There was just something that wasn't supposed to be there. And I hailed Jeff and said, "Jeff, I can hear something."
In the early hours of Saturday morning, after 3 bitterly cold Thredbo nights, New South Wales Fire Brigade rescuer Steve Hurst heard something over the roar of the chainsaws.
Rescue party working overhead, can you hear me? Yelled it straight in the rubble and got this voice back, "I can hear you." My heart nearly launched out of my chest. It was pounding so hard, it was incredible.
He basically said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm not injured, I'm just effing cold." He said, "Not a problem." He said, who are you? What's your name? I told him I'm Stuart Diver, and so we had to say that a few times before he worked out who I was. He said, "Is there anyone else with you?" I said, "Yeah, my wife's with me, but she's dead." And he said, "No worries, you just hang tight, we're coming to get you."
Melbourne Metro Fire Brigade rescuer Mark O'Connor was one of those who crawled into the wreckage to reach Stuart.
Is there much room in there?
We put a what's called a search camera through, and we illuminated the light on the end of it to see if Stuart could see it. And he said it was starting to light up the environment he was in, so we knew roughly we were in the right area.
I thought there's a little gap over there, so I dragged myself across, and I stopped when the light was shining right in the middle of my forehead. And I just looked up, and there was this gap up there, and there was a light shining down. I thought, unbelievable, this is great.
Okay, Stuart, I want you just to move the camera around.
He was in brilliant spirits at that stage, considering he'd been in there for like 50 hours up until then. And then we basically had to try and figure out where he was in relation to us.
The rescuers told Stuart he'd soon be out, but it rapidly became clear this was not to be.
We were a bit confused at first because we thought he was about 5 foot in front of us behind all this rubble, and we established shortly afterwards that he was actually below us, about half a metre below us, and it turned out to be below 2 slabs of concrete.
Jeff Courtney crawled down close to where Stuart was lying and found a tiny hole through the concrete slabs.
He put his fingers up, and I took my gloves off and I reached across and grabbed him, and his hands were so cold, it was just unbelievable.
He put his hand through and grabbed onto his hand, and there were tears then, I can tell you.
I'm going to get you out as soon as we can, okay?
It took me by fright how cold he was, and I've never felt anybody alive before who was that cold. And it was just really great, and it was just amazing feeling to have.
It was an unbelievable feeling to feel a human hand and feel the warmth of that hand and know that, you know, it was all, from that moment on, I knew that it was going to be okay, they were going to get me out.
Next, surviving the trauma.
I didn't pick myself out to survive. That just happened. That was fate.
(9:30 Wednesday on 7.
Do you know what you're in for?
I think so. Do you?
Things don't always go their way.
People at the bank are asking questions about a loan we extended to you.
But
All he did was survive. But 18 other people, all of them friends, did not make it through. Among those killed in the landslide was Stuart's best friend, his young wife Sally. So for Stuart and his family, it's hard to know whether to be happy or sad. Not surprisingly, they feel a mixture of pain and joy, and not a little confusion. Now in the full glare of the public eye, they face the difficult task of rebuilding their lives. But as you'll see, Stuart in particular is made of strong stuff. It was a Saturday afternoon, yet Australians sat glued to their televisions, waiting for a miracle to happen.
Trapped in a concrete tomb
His survival rated 1,000,000 to 1 chance.
Around the disaster site, rescuers, ambulance workers and well-wishers all gathered for the moment.
Yeah, I'm so glad that they found someone up there.
It had taken 11 hours to set Stuart Diver free, but it was worth the wait.
Clapping themselves on the arm and on the shoulder. Well done, a job well done to retrieve this man alive.
We brought him down and he saw daylight for the first time.
And I looked up and there was the blue sky, and something that I never thought I'd ever see.
And this was the face that amazed the world, cleaned up by paramedics, dazed by the light.
And he said, "Thank God you've brought me out in the daylight. I never thought I'd see daylight again." And it was just really good.
What a wonderful moment, a rewarding moment this must be.
Didn't really feel alive, but then I heard the cheer of all the people there and all the crowd and everything like that. It was just amazing.
After all the hours and all the heartache, here was hope.
Stuart was airlifted to Canberra Hospital, arriving to a chorus of cheers.
And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil.
Stuart Diver and his family are not religious people, but support of salvos, like Lieutenant Colonel Don Woodland, has been a great comfort to them.
When they go home, and then the realisation of what has happened will slowly dawn upon them. And as the physical recovers, then you get to the mental anguish and the emotional anguish of what they have yet to go through.
I'd like to express my sincere sympathy for the loss of your wife, Sally, and also your...
There's no doubt that Stuart has spirit, but he is a reluctant hero.
It's better to see my mum and dad say, you probably feel very sad over the loss of your wife, but I really want you to know that lots of people think you're very brave. I hope you can be happy. I don't feel like a hero at all. Like, I just did what had to be done down there to survive. You know, my mind did what had to be done, the body did what had to be done, and I managed to get through, you know, with the help of everyone else around. So yeah, it feels very bizarre.
A week after the rescue, Stuart Diver is returning to a kind of normality, having lunch, watching the rugby, with the trauma put to one side.
Stuart, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
That's good, that's good. How's the pain today? Good, yeah. How'd you sleep? Yeah, good.
All are amazed by his rapid recovery.
Let's have a look how things are going.
Yeah, the toes look really good.
Yep.
Trauma specialist Dr. Damien McMahon says Stuart's frostbitten toes are healing well.
Good, and the redness going out of the foot now?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
He does have some other lacerations, and he's pretty stiff and sore, but this time next week, those wounds will be just about healed. His toes will just about be healed, and I imagine he'll be walking, if not running.
Jeez, it hurts.
The other side of his injuries, of course, is what he has to deal with emotionally from the entrapment and losing his loved one. I suspect that next month he'll find it a lot tougher to cope.
There are moments when Stuart appears very alone, with a big wall between him, the world, and his grief. But Stuart's not a great believer in giving in to anything, least of all to emotion.
Yeah, my sort of motto has been, if anything gets you down, it's not allowed to get you down for more than 10 seconds. That's sort of been my philosophy in life. So I've had downs this week, don't you worry about that. I've been down there, and the tears have been shed and all that sort of stuff, but you know, it just sits in the back of my mind. You can't let it keep getting you down.
If there are moments of despair, he's able to control or hide them when he's showing his new, very public face to the world.
It was presented to me yesterday. It's Warwick Kid's torch. It's got his name on it down the bottom there. Fire Brigade issue. So don't tell the Fire Brigade. But
he's more comfortable talking about the heroic work of his rescuers than what we'd all like to know, what he's feeling.
It's the whole of Australia that feels the tragedy. But if it gets too intimate, if they don't need to know, I'm not going to tell them. Or if I feel that I can't, I won't.
The joy of getting the boy out, and but knowing full well that Sally wasn't going to come out, you know, it was pretty tough.
Don Woodland from the Salvos has been counselling the family on the tough times ahead.
I guess there will be times when you will almost feel guilty because Sally's lost her life.
It's been very, very stressful for all of us because of losing Sally as well as Stuart coming out of his little tomb that he came from. Yeah, very mixed emotions in it.
That's all you do.
See you later.
All the best, Stuart.
Thanks very much.
When Stuart leaves the hospital, it's a smiling face he turns to the staff. But some of them, like nurse Marina Bogarts, have seen the darker side.
When he first arrived on the ward, he talked about when it happened, when his first moment, his first thoughts, when he was trapped. And it was very, very emotional for Stuart and for us.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
I think there will be hard times ahead.
It's the worst when I first get out of bed in the morning.
A few days later, and Stuart is out in the real world, but still surrounded by family.
The wattles.
For Sally's mother, Margie, it's a bitter, sweet time.
You just go back to lock the car.
And I guess that's the thing we're finding hard with all this media business, that Stuart seems to have been thrust into the limelight, and Sally sort of seems to have been forgotten a little bit. And so that's a really difficult thing for us to be coming to grips with. He's gorgeous.
Sally's mother and sister Anna are left with vivid memories.
He'd have got Sal through, but...
Tell me about Sally. What sort of a girl was she?
Blonde, blue-eyed, smiling.
Bright pink lipstick, always.
Bright pink lipstick, yeah, did she?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my memories. Sal's face. Just right, like a picture in my head, Sal's face. With her blonde hair and her big smile with bright pink lipstick.
Always happy-go-lucky. Yeah, got on with everybody.
Laid back.
Had lots of friends.
Stuart met Sally 8 years ago at a hospitality management course at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. They married in 1995.
Couldn't wait to get home and see Sal, and vice versa, and like to go to bed at night and cuddle up and just lie there. The comfort and like the love we had.
Stuart taught Sally to ski, and they spent a year in Canada before returning to Thredbo to live and work. They were so close, he says, that he never feared death, even as it stared him in the face.
You think about it, you're lying down there in a place which you could only describe as, pure hell, and you're lying next to the body of your dead wife. You're not really going to be too afraid of death, because it seems like a pretty good option, and I mean, my philosophy is that you don't just die and that's the end of it, that the spirit goes on, and it didn't seem like a bad option. And even...
Really? Really?
Yeah.
You're not afraid?
I wasn't afraid.
This is a close-knit family, but Stuart's mother, Annette, is not one for tears either.
As far as I'm concerned, it was an extraordinary thing that happened to a very ordinary family. And that sort of sums up our feelings, I think. We still don't believe that it's happened to Stuart, it's happened to us, it's happened to Margie and Anna.
But there's something not quite ordinary about these people. Stuart's parents took him bushwalking from the age of 3. At 6, he was trekking in New Zealand, carrying his own pack. At 9, it was the Himalayas.
You're pretty tough, aren't you?
I think I've got a strong mind. Yeah, I don't know whether tough's the word. Tough sort of conjures up macho sort of images. I don't think I'm macho.
Where does that come from?
I think everything comes together to make that one, to give you that spirit or that sense of power. There's no one specific thing, and I don't think it is, I don't think it's genetic that, that some people are made tough and other people are made weak. I think it's all these whole life's experiences all moulded into one.
He's a very strong character.
And where do you think he gets that from?
I don't know. I can't say really. Chip off the old block. I don't know. I'd like to think so.
You ready? Yep. Okay.
He's just an ordinary, lovely boy. you know, just an ordinary human being that was just went to bed with his wife and happened to be thrown into this amazing situation. He's not a hero.
Do you think others would have survived in that position? Strikes me he's not quite just an ordinary man.
You say it's an unusual trait, but I think the whole family has got that same trait. They're all very determined.
Great, thank you for that. Many grief counsellors speak of an irrational but very real guilt that survivors suffer after coming through when others have died in tragedy. Mention of this is one way to raise Stuart's temper.
Pain. There's no reason at all that I should feel any guilt. I didn't knock the building down. I'm not the man in charge of landslides.
I'm not suggesting it's rational. I'm just saying that's how,
I know, and I've heard this before, and it's just such a garbage idea that I could ever feel any guilt. I survived, you know, and that's an amazing feat. I didn't pick myself out to survive. That just happened. That was fate. There'll never any guilt. Guilt is such a stupid idea.
Stuart Diver says he always makes every year better than the last, and this year will be no exception. Given the circumstances, it seems an extraordinary thing to believe. Don't think it's taking positive thinking too far to turn...
No, I don't think it is, because the positives that can come out of something like this, the bonding that can happen in a community, sure, there's huge negatives, but if you just dwell on that, I think you'll just slowly eat yourself up. So I want to dwell on, let's take all the positive things out of what has happened, myself surviving, how it does give inspiration, and let's try and make something really good out of it.
Next up, why the Thredbo disaster should never have been allowed to happen.
So what do you think it was an act of? Crass stupidity.
Was it just a random act of nature, or was it a tragedy made inevitable by ill-conceived development? Witness commissioned one of Australia's leading geotechnical consultants, Charles Fitzharding, to survey the site. And his conclusions in advance of the official coronial inquiry are disturbing. But as Mark Llewellyn reports, Fitzharding is not the only expert, or indeed the first one, to conclude that building on that mountain slope was fraught with danger.
Australia's alpine landscape. Beautiful but fragile. When Thredbo village was opened up 40 years ago, its potential intoxicated skiers and developers alike.
Thredbo, with its lodges and inns set among the picturesque Australian snow gums, can accommodate nearly 2,000 people in comfort conforming to modern standards.
Steve Solosky was one of the first builders at Thredbo, building 12 lodges. But there was one place he wouldn't touch, the steep hillside land on which Corinya Lodge, the first to go in the landslide, would eventually be built. This was a site of land that you would definitely not build on.
Definitely not.
What were your fears?
Well, the reason is, you see, because at the time, this area wasn't even considered to be a future building site of Thredbo village.
Was it not considered because people feared that it was a landslide area?
Definitely. This was a sort of common understanding. This area is unstable. This is the landslide which occurred in 1959. It's quite prominent. You can see it. The vegetation is missing, and the present landslide occurred just slightly to the left where Corinya was slid away.
10 years before construction even began on Corinya, the land almost directly above it collapsed.
The landslide was very significant because it shone the unstable layer of the subterranean soil.
It showed to you that this area was geologically unstable.
Exactly.
This is where the 1959 landslide happened. Metres away is the section of slope which collapsed on top of Corinya Lodge. It seems remarkable the authorities ever allowed Corinya's construction when they knew the slope above it, the slope which gave way, was a landslip area. And they did know. Witnesses learnt that as far back as 1959, requests to build on that slope were knocked back because it was too dangerous. They knew, and so did the locals. What would they say to you?
Oh, they just more or less say that one of these days these things will all slip down to... Well, they used to state that they'd slip down to the river. Come on, Max. Come on, boy.
Today, Kevin Burke, a former mayor of the Snowy Mountains Shire, is a retired farmer. But when Corinya was being built, he was a haulage operator taking sand and gravel to the site. It was the summer of '69, a time of working bees and high optimism, except from the locals.
Well, there was always people stating that you would, you know, it was a bad place to build. They all had that sort of that feeling that it was just, they wouldn't build there on the side of that hill. And it's a very steep hill.
The landslide that ripped down this slope and took 18 lives sheeted home the inherent dangers of building in the snow country. In its aftermath, some have argued that this was an act of God, but other voices say it was no such thing, that man, not nature, was the major cause, the culmination of a series of bad decisions that made weak land weaker, and began with the decision to build here on unsafe ground. It has been said by some that this was merely an act of God.
Well, God's not that stupid. She doesn't make elementary errors of common sense.
So what do you think it was an act of?
Crass stupidity. No one builds on an active landslide without expecting the inevitable geological consequences.
In the days after the landslide, geologist Professor Ian Plimer went to Thredbo. In the weeks since, his concerns have crystallised. Critical is the role of the retaining wall built on the road directly above Corinya Lodge. It was built last summer by the New South Wales Parks and Wildlife Service. What was the significance of the retaining wall?
Well, a retaining wall changes the flow of water. Instead of having water flow across the land surface, it pushes the water underground, and that would have actually forced more water to go at that boundary between the soil and the rock. That would have lubricated the surface even more.
What makes steep slopes in alpine areas so dangerous is water. Water both weakens the soil and makes it heavier, increasing its tendency to slide down the slope. Nature copes through natural runoff, but once man interferes, dangerous factors come into play, which is why the retaining wall may be crucial if indeed it forced water to seep into the slope above Corinya. So you're pushing more water back down when you don't want that to happen?
Yes, that's exactly what you don't want to have happen. If there were to be retaining walls put there, then they should have been pinned and drained with pipes, pulling the water out of them and putting that water across the surface. That happens everywhere else in the world. It's a normal procedure in geologically unstable areas.
There's no evidence of those holes.
There are no weep holes in this wall.
Right.
So this wall must have been designed with the intention of taking the water to some drains at either end.
But would it have been possible that without the outlet holes it would have pushed the water down? It would have created a force, a pressure?
Well, what is possible is that the drainage that's there it hasn't been adequate, and water has in fact been led down by this drainage layer into the sill behind the road, and that could have contributed to the instability.
Charles Fitzharding is a geotechnical expert. We asked him to survey the site. He too was concerned about the retaining wall, but what puzzled him was the sheer power of the Thredbo landslide. He suspected another factor as well. Then he discovered this, evidence of a high-pressure water main dug into the slope beside Corinya Lodge. National Parks and Wildlife Service of New South Wales was the approval body for constructions like this.
Landslides are almost invariably caused by water. So if this pipe had been, for example, leaking, maybe due to the earlier movement of the ground, that could have triggered the landslide. Even if it hadn't been leaking and a landslide occurred, that could have produced a large quantity of water that would have changed what might have been a fairly uneventful minor landslide into the major catastrophe that we've had.
Charles Fitzharding's report for Witness puts forward this theory. As water was forced under the retaining wall, the soil began to move, putting pressure on the pipe until it cracked, leaking more water into the already unstable slope. At some point, the pipe ruptured, and this is critical. A deluge of water would have been released, giving the landslide its devastating power.
What would have been the power of the landslide?
Massive, absolutely enormous. You are dealing with a huge amount of material that was lubricated, that moved down the slope at great speed with a huge amount of energy.
We've got in excess of 2,000 tonnes of material coming down that slope at speed. You might look at this as something like 50 heavily laden 50-tonne semi-trailers parked at the top of a hill, and suddenly the handbrakes are released and they rush down and hit the buildings.
Stuart Diver's own account speaks of the force of the water, giving weight to Fitzharding's theory.
Yeah, the water was, at times, it flowed over my whole body. So the only way I could survive was I pushed myself up against the roof and just had a little pocket of air right up against the roof like that. I'd just breathe on the roof and the water would be flying around like this.
In the weeks ahead, a coronial inquiry will search for answers about the role man played in the 18 deaths at Thredbo. Questions about the retaining wall and its possible design flaws. Questions, too, about the sense of laying a high-pressure water pipe in a moving, unstable and very steep slope.
It's obviously a very unsatisfactory situation to have existed.
To have placed a pipe in an area of land that was moving, that was quite obviously moving.
Yes.
But more than this are the questions about the warnings ignored in the rush to develop Thredbo.
Can we say confidently that other buildings at Thredbo are not at risk?
Thredbo is built on a steep slope. The whole slope is an unstable slope. The most unstable part of the slope did fail. There are other areas on that slope which are unstable.
When you heard the news of the Thredbo landslide and heard that it was Corinya that had gone, were you surprised?
Well, I was surprised it didn't happen years before.
That it didn't happen years before?
That's right.
But you weren't surprised that it happened?
I wasn't surprised it did happen, because we know sooner or later it's going to be a disaster in Thredbo.
Coming up, a family's tribute to the real heroes of Thredbo.
I mean, there's nothing that we could do to ever repay what they've done for us.
You could almost hear the cheer around the country. Imagine then what that moment must have felt like for the 2,000 or so rescue workers who had searched round the clock for survivors, yet until that point found nothing but bodies. Many of them had volunteered to give up their holidays or to take time off their regular jobs to be part of the massive rescue effort, and all of them had given up sleep. It's for that reason that the families of Stuart and Sally Diver have asked for an opportunity to say thank you.
An unbelievable group of very dedicated guys came and got me out of the hole, and you know, and without their sort of support and everyone else's support, the whole of the Thredbo community and then the whole of Australia and basically everywhere, like, it's just amazing how they all work as such a team. And even in between the teams, the paramedics, the firefighters, the fire rescue guys, and the SES guys, and how everyone just, didn't worry about what colour suit they were wearing and that sort of stuff, and all just jumped in together. It's just amazing.
I would really like to thank all the people who've sent faxes and all the people who've sent messages and presents, and I think on behalf of Stuart, we just can't thank them enough. We have no hope of replying to all of these messages, but I really would like to thank everyone very, very much for their thoughts, especially all the little kids and all the comments, and it was just amazing.
That support, like when I was in hospital getting 2 mailbags a day, was just unbelievable.
I'd also like to thank a small group of people who were Salvation Army chaplains, and they were just extremely helpful, weren't they, Margie?
I mean, they were just the most amazing people. I mean, I've always known the Salvation Army do really wonderful work. I mean, they were just available 24 hours a day. You know, nothing was too much for them. And even now that I've come back home, you know, they're constantly on the phone checking that we're okay and is there anything that they can do. I mean, they have just been incredible. The police that we dealt with over Sally's death, you know, the people that came to tell us about Sally, I mean, they were just so compassionate and, you know, they knew how we would be feeling and they didn't, you know, push anything. Oh, I can't thank them enough. I mean, there's nothing that we could do to ever repay what they've done for us.
Channel 7 and the Australian Women's Weekly have joined forces to support the Thredbo Family Relief Fund. Money raised will go to the families of the victims and the rescue organisations. Details of how you can make a donation are in this month's Australian Women's Weekly, or you can send a tax-deductible donation to GPO Box 3600, Sydney 2001.
Ahead in the late news, calls for national action against child molesters. A new inquiry into our greatest war mystery. And was the first moon landing all a hoax?
You know, you'd look great as a blonde. Do I know you? Nice and easy. 104. It's you. Well, I've never colored my hair. Oh, trust me. See, Nice and Easy works with your hair's own tones and highlights. Look at mine. Doesn't it look natural?
Yeah.
Time to rinse.
What is that doing?